There we go. Oh, God, hey, what's going on, everybody out there in native lands, Turtle Island? Want to say thank you for joining us right here tonight on the B&B Indigenous Podcast. Patrick, Little Wolf Brooks, my brother from another mother, is going to be joining us here momentarily. Had to go with his kid, of course. She's in high school. You know how it is. You got family events that are going on like that. We want to make sure and be as supportive as we can for our children, of course. So he'll be joining us here really soon. Tonight's special guest joining us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, Rachel Thunder. We're going to be talking to her in depth about the ongoing struggle, as the title suggests, for Native social justice issues that have been ongoing in the Little Earth Ojibwe community, aka the Little Earth Projects. If you guys haven't been out there and you guys really don't know much, go and stop in and support those local native businesses, one of which is one of my favorite stops when I go over for Kahominy or Round Dance. That's Powwow Grounds Coffee Company right there on Franklin. Oh, man. And if you guys get a chance to go and get a Juicy Lucy, I'm telling you what, if you haven't had one before, you are missing out. Because listen to me when I say this. Sweet potato fries, you get ranch, you know what I'm saying? And the burgers just got this really oozing lava melted cheddar center, or whatever kind of cheese, if you're at a provolone or what have you. Anyway, that's the Little Earth Ojibwe community. Right out, I think that's the west end, southwest end, right off Interstate 94 for sure. Just a couple blocks, as a matter of fact. When you drive a commercial truck like me, it's not really a lot of easy access for parking, but if you're in a family vehicle, midsize, or a van, what have you, find all kinds of cool business over there. So don't forget to support native tribal businesses, especially in Minneapolis. First, we're going to be getting into a news segment like that, and then we're going to get right into it with our wonderful guest, Rachel Thunder. So, right as it says, leaders of Native American Church pressure the Biden administration for protections of peyote habitat. In Washington, leaders of the country's largest intertribal religious organizations met this week with federal officials and urged them to uphold Native rights to use peyote in religious ceremonies. On Tuesday, leaders of the Native American Church of North America, or NACNA for short, convened at the Department of the Interior to ask the federal government to uphold its legal responsibilities in enforcing the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, or ARFA, of 1978. Signed into law by President Jimmy Carter, ARFA protects the rights of Native Americans to exercise their traditional religions and ensures access to sacred sites and the use and possession of sacred objects. NACNA, which has more than 300,000 members, centers many of its prayer ceremonies around the legal use of peyote as a sacrament. Peyote is a Schedule I substance regulated by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA, and is illegal for non-Native peoples to possess. The federal government is not enforcing ARFA and its 1994 amendment, according to NACNA leaders. Quote, "We witness ARFA being violated every day by clinical and pharmaceutical interests," says John Poncho Brady, telling Native News Online. Quote, "We are working to keep our holy medicine sacred and want it protected in its natural habitat. NACNA leaders are urging the Interior, Agriculture, and Justice Departments to take leadership in protecting the continued use of peyote for enrolled citizens of federally recognized tribes. The group wants the U.S. government to enforce laws that prohibit non-natives from using the drug, but is also asking for federal funding for conservation of peyote and the creation of protected habitats where it can be grown. Peyote is used recreationally by some non-natives and therefore have been efforts to decriminalize its use, which NACNA leaders say violate Native cultural and ceremonial traditions. Recreational use and promotion of peyote as a medicine could lead to overharvesting of the plants, Native leaders said. Quote, this medicine is sacred to us, and people who are not permitted to share its abilities with others outside of our ceremonies are harming our sacred ceremonies, Brady said. Quote, our way of life is not for sale. ERFA is the only federal legislative statute that protects a specific religion in the United States, that of American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and Native Hawaiians. ERFA was amended in 1994 after the Supreme Court ruled in the Oregon Employment Division versus Smith that the use of peyote was prohibited by anyone, native or non-native, by the state of Oregon in 1990. ERFA's 1994 amendment allowed the possession, transportation, and ingestion of peyote in a bona fide ceremony for enrolled citizens of federally recognized tribes. Rising interest in psychedelic drugs, including peyote, is growing among recreational drug users and wellness providers who promote the plant's medicinal properties. That is causing overharvesting of the plants, and because its environment is not protected, the slow-growing cacti may need further protections, such as congressional legislation in the future, Native leaders say. Because peyote only grows on private lands in southern Texas, Hogg, Star, Webb, and Zapata counties, leaders are worried that the plant's environment will continue to diminish and it will be too late. An existing USDA soil conservation program in the region has also contributed to the diminishing habitat of peyote. According to NACNA leaders, because the peyote cacti grows close to the ground, its habitat is being diminished to make way for other crops in the region. According to carbon dating, peyote is more than 10,000 years old. The plant is a slow-growing cacti that takes 8 to 10 years to mature, and its habitat is known by many as the peyote gardens. NACNA is requesting $5 million in federal funding from a new program to be established either by the USDA's existing conservation reserve program or as a standalone grant program to be administered by the Department of the Interior's Office of the Assistant Secretary on Indian Affairs. The project would compensate private landowners for agreeing to convert their lands into a protected habitat and would fund activities that focus on the conservation and managed harvest of peyote. Ideally, the program would be guided by a federal steering committee that would have representation by federally recognized tribes, tribal religious leaders, and organizations such as NACNA, and representatives from the state and federal agencies with jurisdiction over peyote. The committee's scope would be to work collaboratively to create and implement a conservation plan for peyote that manages healthy cultivation and harvesting of peyote. The federal government has passed legislation that supports numerous successful conservation grant programs to protect and restore wetlands, forests, marine habitats, and endangered species habitat. Quote, the entire Biden administration needs to review and assess its full implementation of the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. NACNA's legislative director Ryan Wilson and Ogallala Lakota told Native News Online, quote, they need to shift the focus into meaningful partnerships with private landowners and access to sacred lands and medicines within the nexus of private lands, end quote. Next week, representatives from Indian country, including NACNA leaders, will testify to the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior, Environment, and related agencies on a variety of topics, including protections of peyote and its habitat. If you'd like to know more about this article, you can definitely check out nativenewsonline.net. They have many wonderful articles that I know most of you, if you are not informed and up to date on Native social justice issues, entertainment within the Native community all across Turtle Island, you can definitely find them at nativenewsonline.net. The next one is a wonderful article. This article was written by Rachel Heaton of the Muckleshoot people. My people don't need to be saved. We want to be respected. I've always thought from the get-go, when outsiders and non-natives are coming into our communities, there should be a protocol in place, like an orientation, or even bigger than that. I believe that if one is going to work or volunteer in American Indian communities, then one, you must have the heart for it. Not everyone from the outside can handle Indian country. My people have suffered hundreds of years of trauma and still live the effects of it in our communities. So if you aren't coming to our lands with a genuine heart and want to really understand our people, then you aren't ready to help us. 2, if you have never lived among us, been around us, learned our ways, or even aware of them, then as outsiders, you must learn to have value in it enough to respect it. Respect who we are and understand that we want the help. We want the support, but we do not need outsiders to come in and try to run things. Work with us. Our culture, our people, our ways, Creator and Mother Earth, they are all important and vital to us. We do not need outsiders coming in and trying to change that either. I had the privilege to go to Standing Rock, Rachel says, in August, and I went 2 more times after that, up until the end of November. I don't intend to sound exaggerated, but for my first visit to camp, when there was nothing but prayers, teepees, tents, and the songs of various tribes all around you, until my most recent one, where militarized police were using water cannons on my people, almost blew off the arm of another protector. Outsiders came in, built their own structures the way they wanted and to their benefit, without the regard to the land they were on. Strangers to the cause coming in and putting strain on resources. It was like watching 500 years of colonization on fast forward. My people don't need to be saved. We want to be respected. Respect our culture, our people, our ways, Creator and Mother Earth. Respect our land. But before coming to, quote, help us out, learn about where you're going, who you are among, and understand that the respect that should be shown before coming to our aid. As we expect to show respect for that help that has come to us, walk alongside us, not ahead of us. Of course, I believe life itself is about the respect of all people across all lands, living and breathing human beings. I love all people, but I love my people and who I am too. I hate seeing what's taking place across Mother Earth. Rachel Heaton, Muckleshoot. If you guys enjoyed that writ, you can definitely check out lastrealindians.com. Of course, want to say thank you to nativenewsonline.net and Last Real Indians for their contributions. We love to make sure that and keep our elders and the rest of our community informed. And without further ado, we want to say welcome, Rachel. It's so wonderful to actually see you, and we really are excited that you are here with us tonight. How you doing?
Rachel Thunder. Hello, and thank you for having me on, and thank you everybody that's tuning in and watching this also in the future. My name is Rachel Thunder. I'm Plains Cree, Nihioak, Treaty 8, and I'm with the American Indian Movement based here out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm doing good. I feel like I can breathe a little bit, and I'm excited to be on the show and to share with Indian country and our listeners, what has been going on here in our communities in Minneapolis.
Oh, that's, and you said you breathe a little easier, and I was thinking to myself, the exact reason for the community coming out the way that they have has been because of issues. I mean, from my understanding, there was a super fun cleanup site that happened. What was that in the 90s, correct?
Mm-hmm. So the site in question that we're going to talk about tonight is called the Roof Depot. That's what everybody calls it. And it's a 7.5 acre site here in South Minneapolis in the East Phillips neighborhood, right between Hiawatha and Cedar Ave, about 2 blocks next to Little Earth United Tribes. And it is a site that has a long and toxic history. So currently there is a large warehouse that was built there by Sears. So it's the Sears warehouse. But before then, there was a pesticide plant that existed there for nearly 30 years. And this pesticide plant dumped arsenic into the soil and into the water. And arsenic does not dissipate over time. And so, yes, your question is, the answer to your question is yes. This site was designated a Superfund site due to how much arsenic it released, not only on that site, but in the surrounding community. It's actually part of something here called the Arsenic Triangle in Minneapolis. And so you go around, you talk to community here, people my age, they remember the city and the state coming in and literally removing all of the soil from the houses and the yards in the community around this site because so much arsenic had been released into the surrounding area. I think the city removed around 50,000 tons of topsoil from this area because there was so much arsenic. And that's not that long. I'm 31 years old. So this is pretty recent. And that's not all the yards, right? There's still a lot of contaminated areas around here. And that warehouse was built on top of this site. So all of that soil remediation never happened underneath this warehouse. So all of that arsenic, because it doesn't dissipate over time, is still present underneath the warehouse at the roof depot.
Yeah, that's just, and it, when I saw what was going on, when you guys posted several Facebook Live videos that night, and those aunties and grandmas out there, Kokums and Mushums, and all of the people that came to support that night that were kept at bay because of the militarized action of the Minnesota or Minneapolis, Minnesota Police Department, my response is always the same. First of all, it's anger. And hearing some of the statements that were being made and the things that were being discussed really had me thinking a lot. You know, you come here, one of the aunties said, and you want to put the law down. You know, Mayor Fry comes over here and starts wanting to bully us. So what's he do? He calls how many? 50 police officers, the entire Minneapolis Police Department. But where are you when our sisters and our children come up missing? Where are you to protect us when we need you the most? Why is all of this being focused on the attention of our people? Is it because you're scared of what we are and our true power? My biggest thought has always been the misappropriation of the word usage power. I always remember Sheila Toozy and Thunderheart. You know, power, that's not power. That's paper, Ray. Power is that river. Power is a rainstorm, she said. I'm like, oh, that's it, you know, and that's, and to be honest, that is most definitely what they are afraid of. You know what I'm saying? They get everybody all riled up, first of all. That's the way to start picking people apart. Here in Standing Rock, right down the road from where I'm at, what they did is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, flew an airplane overhead. The number one reason for that wasn't monitoring people, because they couldn't see through the clouds most of the time when it was overcast. I mean, maybe heat signatures from infrared, but it was a psychological attack on people. The less sleep they get, the more irritable they become, and then the more we can legitimize our attack on them and our use of violent force. Mm-hmm. That's my question to you now is, I mean, does that seem like something that the police officers that responded there, were they a little bit more forthcoming? Because I understand you got arrested and were held for, what, like 5 hours, something like that?
Yeah, so there's a huge kind of like story behind this site, because this fight that community has been leading here has spanned almost a decade, right? So there's so many different pieces to it. And originally, community had plans to purchase the site, the 7.5 acres, which is like the warehouse and like 3.5 acres of like a lot that's next to it, with the intention of turning it into like this urban eco farm that would have large indoor aquaponics systems, you know, community space for ceremony, for cultural events, community meeting space, farmers market, offices, businesses, a huge solar array, you know, bringing in green jobs to this community and providing produce to this community. This community exists in a food desert. There's not affordable fresh produce here for our people. And so the community had plans to purchase this land, and the city of Minneapolis came in this backdoor deal and ended up purchasing the site. So it's currently owned by the city of Minneapolis. And what the city of Minneapolis wants to do is, because this Mayor Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, has made these deals, these political deals, you know, with his funders, with his campaign funders, different developers and contracting companies. He has signed contracts as the city of Minneapolis to demolish the warehouse, which would release all of the arsenic and this like toxic plume into the community, and then to turn the entire 7.5 acres into a city diesel work truck facility, where all 880 diesel trucks would be constantly coming in and out of the community here, refueling and adding to the pollution. Like, so part of his campaign and his promise to the community here was to reduce pollution, because there's a lot of pollution already here in this community. And so he actually designated that area as a green zone to reduce pollution. But now, after he's won his campaign, switches and makes these deals to developers, to contractors that fund his campaigns, to do this demolition and to build this truck yard that would add to pollution. This community, the East Phillips neighborhood, already has the second highest levels of asthma in the entire state. Like, what do you think 880 diesel trucks would do constantly coming in and out of the community? So, like what we're saying about money, right? And like, I think I always think of John. I always think of John Trudell, because he said that all they care about is money, and that money is an illusion of power, and that the real power is with the earth. And as Indigenous people, that's where we get our power, is from the earth. And so we do scare them. This past decade, all of the processes and protocols in the system to obtain them have been followed by community. And so it got to this point where demolition was scheduled for the 27th, and community didn't know what to do. And they approached us as AIM, the elders, the women, the grandmothers of Little Earth and of the larger East Phillips Indigenous community here, and said, we don't know what to do. And so we talked about it. We talked to the elders, we talked to the grandmothers, prayed about it, put a lot of thought into it. And ultimately we decided that in order to halt demolition, that we would do an occupation of the Roof Depot site. Yeah. So on the 21st, the 21st of February, 2023, we went at sunrise, and we broke the locks to the 3.5 acre yard that's there attached to the Roof Depot, and went in. And we immediately opened the day with ceremony. We had a sunrise ceremony that was run by Fred de Charlet. We filled our pipes. We put a teepee up. We lit a spirit fire, and continued to set up camp grounded in that ceremony. And you're absolutely right. They are scared of us. They're scared of the power of our people, because our people do have power, because our strength and our power comes straight from the earth, which is the true power, the ultimate power. And, that day that we were there, we set up, had our occupation, we had a press conference, we were very transparent. We had a lot of media coming in and out, local news, independent media, constant live feeds. People were like, can we take pictures? We're like, absolutely, take pictures of everything. We're not hiding anything. No drugs, no alcohol, no weapons, no violence, no drug dealers, no Johns coming in and out of camp, nothing like that. And ever since the murder of George Floyd, the Minneapolis Police Department, which is severely understaffed now, has taken the stance that they don't respond to nonviolent crimes, right? So if your car gets stolen, if you get robbed, if, one of our women go missing, if there's a John driving around the neighborhood trying to pick up our women, they don't come. You can call them, but they don't come. Unless somebody literally gets shot, they don't come. Even if there's gunshots, which, we hear gunshots a lot here, but they don't come unless someone physically gets shot. So they have taken the stance for, 2 years now, well over 2 years, that they don't respond to nonviolent crimes anymore. Yet the entire Minneapolis Police Department, it was over 100 officers, came in a little under 12 hours of peaceful, prayerful, ceremonial camp with no drugs, no alcohol, no violence, and they came in force. There was over 100 of them. They completely shut down Hiawatha. They shut down the footbridge. They shut down 26th, 27th, 28th, completely encircled the camp. And they waited for the moment when a lot of our people were out getting supplies for the night, because we had a lot of snow coming in. And, you know, a lot of our men were out doing like patrol, and they waited for that moment when it was us women in camp, and they completely surrounded it. And like what you said is right. They cut off everybody. No one could get in or out. And they cut the fence on the south side, like with a saw. It was super dramatic. I'm like, if they had just come to the gate, I probably would have let them in. Like,
right.
We don't have anything to hide, but they had this big saw, and they like cut through the chain link fence and like came in like 50 of them deep and did this like big swipe like across the camp. And there was 8 of us that ended up getting arrested that night, myself included.
Yeah, pathetic. And see, this is, to me, one of the number one tactics, first of all, is they want to try and overwhelm the situation at all costs. That's speaking from an experienced police officer, former police officer in a tribal jurisdiction. You know, they have briefing. They have briefing and debriefing. So they talk about the beginning of the day's issues with the shift that is ending. So it's a 24-hour cycle, as you know. They talk about things that are relevant to whatever is going on in their patrol district that night. And of course, with the major cities like Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Portland, or Seattle, or Sacramento, San Francisco, LA, there's precincts all over the city. So each of those places has an isolated, different box of issues, we'll say that. But one of the things that I've noticed is that they get to this point where they want to act like they've got the entire beat. You know what I'm saying? For instance, here in Morton County, they had no jurisdiction whatsoever, right? But because, you know, we're going to tell you Indians right now, you're going to take your poisoning and you're going to like it. We're going to unearth your burial sites. We're going to destroy and do whatever we want to do because we're not giving you any choice. It doesn't matter if it's in Minnesota. It doesn't matter if it's in Standing Rock. It doesn't matter if it's Peabody Coal in Navajo Nation. It doesn't matter if it's anywhere. The LNG pipeline in Tacoma Puyallup Reservation is literally abuts the city of Tacoma. It doesn't matter. The funny thing is when our people start to organize and get the word out like that, that is what truly scares them. The sheriff, Kyle Kirkmeyer, I don't know if he's still the sheriff here or he got voted out, or whoever else. Jack Dalrymple was the governor at the time during that situation. They can't handle it. They get overwhelmed, especially be like, hey, who do we call when it's the police that are attacking nonviolent people? You know what I'm saying? You're going to do what we say. So it all leads to follow the money. You know, who's funding this situation? Patrick and I always talk about hydroponic food solutions. You talk about a food desert, it really bothers me when I hear things like that. And then that auntie that was there at the Minneapolis Indian Women's Resource Center, I love that little building. As a matter of fact, I went to my first round dance Kahominy in that building. She got up and she was talking about the death of her child. No one should have to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So for you guys to go out there and put forth that kind of action to say, you know what, we're not going to tolerate it anymore. And we have every right when they show up, when the cavalry is on site and they surround you like that. That's this same old hat for 530 years. Well, we'll just overwhelm them and they won't know what to do. But what I think that is related to, thanks to, it's Jacob Fry, if I'm not mistaken. He's scared. That's what it is. Oh, we don't want another Standing Rock on our hands. We don't want a bunch of Indians coming here and camping and, you know, causing a big panic. But your eloquence, the eloquence of all of those elders and all of the people that came there to support, it was good to see the turnaround. The following day or 2 days later, everybody went to City Hall, you know, City Council. It was like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? Wait, you're going to take this poisoning or else. It's like, what do we got to do? You know what I mean? What's the biggest plan for us in the future? That's my thought, because the community and native social justice actions that are happening when you guys do these things like that, obviously it's a big threat to their money. It's a big threat to their court system. And then when you brought up Uncle John, when I listen to Tribal Voice, I think about that. To me, that's listening to the Bible. You know what I mean? Like, for Christians, you know what I'm saying? His word is bond, and not only that, you can't stop the truth. But that's my biggest question now. What's to come in the next couple of weeks for you guys? Are you planning any more bigger events or music festivals to showcase this situation, or a gardener's harvesting festival?
Since the occupation on the 21st, there's been so many things that have happened, and you touched on a few of them, and we can kind of go through those and then talk about the future. But you did hit on something that I wanted to talk about, which is follow the money. And that night that the Minneapolis Police Department was sent on us, you could tell that there were many of them that did not want to be there. And one of them, when I got arrested, that took me and dropped me off at a shelter. They didn't want to take me downtown because they said someone had told them they were going to take me downtown and, process me, book me and everything. But they booked me in a booking van and then put me in a police cruiser and then dropped me off at the Homeward Bound shelter because someone had called them and said, don't bring her downtown. It's bad for optics. So
in the late 60s, early 70s, when the American Indian movement was first starting out, and I mean, because there were already community actions going on with the Belcourt family and other families in the Minneapolis-St. Paul communities, the police would literally beat our men, sometimes nearly to death, sometimes to death, and then dump them off in a neighborhood that they thought, and it kind of reminded me of a movie, Dead Presidents. I don't know if you've seen that, but he said, they beat us up really bad like that, and they took us into an opposing gang neighborhood thinking that they were going to kill us. And instead they were like, what's up, homies? Are you guys okay? And see a lot of people in the communities like that, because Minneapolis-St. Paul has a lot of people that are nefarious, but they also have a lot of good people there too, and saw that and like, what the hell? So see, the George Floyd situation is just an adage in a modern sense. You had brought up environmental racism. That is absolutely what it is. Bismarck Mandan community right here. They straight up said, oh, well, the white people don't want it. Oh, well, I guess we're going to have to figure out another path then. Well, we might as well put it across that reservation. Them dirty Indians,
so
they can deal with it.
That's exactly what's going on here, like in an urban setting. So there was another location, right, that this diesel truck yard for the city was an option for. Right. And there's these companies, it's owned by the same people, but there's Rachel Contracting and Rachel Development, not owned by me, different Rachel. And both of those companies owned by the same people have contributed to Mayor Fry's political campaign in the past. And so ultimately, the other site that was an option for this truck depot was sold to and contracted for development, with Rachel Development doing that gig, right? And then they turned around and hired Rachel Contracting to do the demolition of the depot site. So, like you said, follow the money. I believe that Mayor Fry has made political and, money promises to individuals and companies that have contributed to his political campaign. And the Roof Depot site is a part of that. And we were told that night by police officers that did not want to be there. They said, look, we don't want to be here. We didn't want to come. We wouldn't be here. This was a direct order from Mayor Fry. He sent us. And so
Right.
he militarized the Minneapolis Police Department against peaceful, prayerful people for profit.
Yeah. I mean,
not because a crime was happening.
No.
Yeah.
It's the same divide and conquer attack, manipulate, persuade, deflect, destroy, and literally obliterate campaign that they've used. I mean, like I said, we all as First Nations people, Indigenous, whatever you're comfortable with calling our people, and we're definitely not Indians, even though we've kind of co-opted that term in recent times, of course. We've got a responsibility, first of all, to say, hey, no matter what you do to us, we are going to stand for the benefit of the earth and for all people living life. What I've had a hard time understanding is when you create and affect changes via solutions. You said there should be food programs, and instead, nope, we're going to shove more poison down your throats. Me, like I said, being a commercial truck operator, I'm parked in a truck stop right now. And I can tell you, walking through the parking lot, if every single one of these truck stops, it is a decimation to my lungs. I cover my face with my sweatshirt most times, or my t-shirt when it's warm out, because I don't want to breathe the NOx. And no matter what they say, there's always some sort of a monetary agenda behind it. This is why I think, and this is just my personal feelings, why we need to put together a panel of people in a professional sense. We need macrobiologists, microbiologists. We need developers in science and engineering. We need our students to be focused on going and learning about these things that will take us out of that nastiness. We were talking about Winnemucca Indian Colony before the show got started. The biggest lithium mining project and nickel mining project in all of the world will destroy the air quality for 1,000 years because they want to develop another aspect of the transportation module that is 10 times worse than the current unleaded oil industry, diesel, natural gas, methane, propane, acetylene, you name it. It's all ugly. Instead of focusing on the opportunity to teach our children to say, hey, we've got an opportunity here to make a really big step forward. We'll take this energy and make it what it needs to be for ourselves. For instance, in Standing Rock, I've talked about this on past podcasts here on the B&B Indigenous Podcast. I brought an HHO generator. I was working at a car wash about 18 years ago, and I was so mad at the way that the earth is being treated, the exhaust, having to walk down the street or smell a bus exhaust, or cars that, from 1972 and it ain't got no, Department of Environmental Quality establishments on it, you know what I mean? It's before that timeline or whatever, and smelling that exhaust. And then, of course, before Standing Rock and all of that, this HHO generator makes unlimited amounts of gas from fresh water or salt water. And it does it with electricity, and the salt is the catalyst. So the electrolyte is the salt, and then it separates the hydrogen and the oxygen into two viable gases. The most explosive and the lightest, most noble gas in the periodic table is hydrogen. It's the lightest element there is. And the fuel industry always tells you, well, yeah, it's really not stable. Well, true in some ways, but you're not storing hydrogen or oxygen gas. You're making it on demand. I took this device to Standing Rock, and I showed a couple of tech geeks around camp. It's like, hey, look at this. And I even went to Chairman Harold Fraser and Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe. I said, you know what this is? A bomb? I was like, I guess if you could apply it for that, but no, it's a gas generator. So the point I'm trying to make is that I think, people in a position such as yourself who have a vocal power to them, and other people in that communal movement over there in Minneapolis and other parts of Turtle Island, we need to take a final stand against these corporations. And as it's projected and prophesized through all the tribes across the land, our people are going to come into their fruition. This is the golden age of information right now. We can either go down the dark side that they're planning for everybody in their nefarious new world order scenarios, International Monetary Fund, their vaccine mandates, their tracking you by your retinas and all of these other things, or we can say, nah, we're going to take this into consideration a different way. You know what I mean? But I like your take on that too. You know what I'm saying? My brother's like, you need to ask her questions. I'm like, but I want to know, I mean, do you see people in the community developing alternatives besides just the food program, or what have you heard over there that way?
So the big focus because it's a big site, right? When you think of 7.5 acres, that's a lot of potential to do things with. And so there's a lot of, issues and trauma here in our community in South Minneapolis, just like there is all over our communities in Turtle Island, right? So there's a lot of different things that we have planned, and there's actually architectural plans. I'd be happy to send them to you so you guys can share them. But one of them is this massive solar array, right? So the entire warehouse, which is massive, if you look at it on Google Maps at the Roof Depot, it's huge. And so there would be a solar array that would cover that entire roof of the depot, of that warehouse. And it would not only, power the entire facility for all of the aquaponics systems and, community centers and all of those things, but it would actually produce income. It would be enough, from our calculations, it would be enough power that we would be like selling it basically to the grid. So that's one thing. And then, having that aquaponic system, that kind of, what is it called? Like that isolated system of, that relationship between the plants and the water and the fish that are in that system. Right. So that, we talk about, a water crisis happening in our lifetimes. And like, the water tables are, lowering drastically, like so much that you can physically see the earth, sinking down as these aquifers that have taken millions of years to fill are being completely drained in like less than 100 years, from like big ag and these unsustainable practices that we have to like feed society. So, those two things, the solar array and the huge indoor aquaponics system, like those two things are right on par based on like green jobs and, eco-friendly, self-sustaining projects that will, I think, benefit the future, right? And then there's another, aspect to this that's going on here in South Minneapolis is our unhoused relatives. And, there's the saying that has been coined around here, that no one was homeless before 1492.
That's right.
So, our community, our relatives, our unhoused relatives are, out here on the streets for various reasons, from multi-generational traumas that our people have not been able to heal from, that, that those resources aren't there, those connections aren't there. And the city of Minneapolis, this is something that we've been fighting, is to stop camp evictions, especially in the winter months. You know how cold it is here. When you clear a camp the day before a blizzard comes to town, you're sending those people out on a death writ. Like, to me, that's premeditated murder, because what you're sending them out into. That's like right. They have their camp established, they have, their setup established where they can survive those nights. But then when you completely evict them and trash their tent, take their stuff, make them find a new spot, how can you expect them to survive? And so part of, the Roof Depot site, part of our plan is creating a permanent facility for our unhoused relatives that is grounded in culture and in ceremony. Not we send them away from community to treatment, in right. in a facility that doesn't understand our people, our cultures, our languages, our ceremonies, our protocols, like our way of thinking, like how we were raised. Instead of sending them off, we're saying, let's bring them in. Let's bring them like straight into community and culture and ceremony. And let's use that to heal this community and to bring our people in from off the streets. So those are some of the three main things. So like the solar array, the aquaponic system, and our unhoused relatives. And that day that we did our occupation at the Roof Depot, we had 7 demands that we read off at the press conference. And one of those demands was for the city of Minneapolis to cease and desist any and all camp evictions during the winter months. And that's something that we're not, we read those demands off. It's not just because the occupation ended doesn't mean that we're not still working and fighting for those demands.
Well, my daughter's mother made a really good point. Who's the bank that's connected? And to me, that is a very, very important question, because the money system in and of itself is dirtier than the most poison, cantankerous water systems out there right now. Dirtier than anything else you can imagine, because, that saying is as old as time. Money is the root to all evil, and it's absolutely true. Like, why is it so necessary for them to have it? First of all, to me, it's a mental health issue, and I'm sure you would agree. I've talked about this before. They've got shows about hoarders. They go into this person's house and it's just filthy. It's stacked to the rafters with magazines and, things that they bought off the Home Shopping Network and whatever, go to yard sales. And they're just appropriating all of these things. Most of the time they're never going to use. And then secondly, they're not going to get rid of it because they don't know how. They have a compulsion. And if they don't get that fixed, or if they don't get their fix, I should say, it bothers them. And I think that is the exact same thing as anyone in the banking system. So Mayor Fry obviously has a connection to his profit engine, same as the Minneapolis Police Department and any other law enforcement agency around the country. So that to me, that's where we got to go. Because my thing, and I'm going to ask you some more questions here in a second, but I called the Office of Environmental Protections there in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Who's in control of this situation? What's going on? And she hung up on me. And then when I tried to call her back, I tried 25 times to call her back. And every single time she sent me to that 311. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it's so funny that you don't want to answer questions. When you ask, well, who's in charge? Who's in charge here? And what's the data say? I mean, if anybody knows anything about asking questions, not to get on Erin Brockovich, but amazing research opportunity that she had. And she found every single person that needed to participate in order to make that lawsuit stick. And she did it. I mean, is that something that you guys are doing right now in that community over there? Are you going, all right, here's target number one? Because
yes, we tried to contact the EPA as well, and their stance on the arsenic was that they don't really get involved. They don't do any wet measurements before exposure, and that they would only do measurements once the depot was demolished and the arsenic was released.
Yeah.
So that was their statement. The city has apparently done some kind of like environmental impact study, and they say that no arsenic is going to be released into the surrounding community. I find that extremely hard to believe. We're like, are you going to put like a bubble around it? Like, what's your plan to like seal it off, to like in case the arsenic, during demolition? They said no, they weren't going to do any of that. And so there's a lot of like, and they hired their own company to do the environmental studies portion of it. So that's something that we're working on with EPNI, which is the East Phillips Neighborhood Institute here. We're going to hire our own study and use that, use that science and use that data. And then as far as the money goes, as far as banking goes, that's a really interesting question. So I have tried to find out funding and money, trace the money and that sort of thing. And it's extremely hard to find. And Mayor Fry is not originally from here, from Minneapolis or Minnesota. He's from Virginia. And if you look at his campaign finances, which is public, right, you can see everybody that donated to his campaign. There's a surprising amount of money coming out of Delaware, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. for his campaign. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a bunch of red flags all over the field. So I guess short answer, no, we don't know. As far as banking and funders and that sort of thing, other than the Rachel contracting and Rachel Bella.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I can tell you from my experience that it's not that they can't care, it's because they won't.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest thought, you brought up Uncle John Trudell. I see that awesome shirt, Uncle Clyde. They had hard-hitting questions. Sometimes they made statements, and sometimes they did things that other people would have thought, I don't know why you did that. You're putting yourself in harm's way. And there were tragedies that erupted, especially with Uncle John and his family. When they, on the longest walk, the COINTELPRO, all of these things to take us down. We have to assess it from the point that there is evil and there's good, and that's it. And they are not good. So obviously they're evil. Uncle would always say, in order to be able to win this battle, we're going to have to outthink them because we can't fight them. There's too many of them. It's I always try to explain this to the people. It's like the Borg in Star Trek. They assimilate you. As soon as they touch you, they infect you with their computer system or whatever like that, and all of a sudden they start to make you one of them. So trying to get away from that, that's what they wanted with the boarding and residential schools. That's what their continuous deprivation of opportunities in native communities and whatnot. But when you were talking about hydroponics and everything like that, that is a big start. If you had a warehouse big enough in that area alone, you could feed 1,000 families every week, the entirety of their lives. If you have a solar project there, now all of a sudden you've got free electricity coming there. Now banks have made investments in solar projects, but not nearly enough. Imagine if every house out there had a solar roof, That's what I'm thinking of, is we got to get past that point of, well, they're not listening to us. They're not giving us any opportunities. So we've got to collectivize enough to say, yes, the native community is suffering, but from my understanding, they're in Little Earth. There's Somalians and there's Mexicanos and there's Koreans and Japanese and Chinese, and we need to bring those people to the table too and say, this isn't just for our benefit. This is because you're as well being poisoned with these type of actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When people hear the phrase, environmental injustice, a lot of people their minds go to rural areas, but environmental injustice happens in urban areas too. And you were talking about the diversity of the communities. East Phillips is one of the most diverse communities in Minneapolis. You're absolutely right. There's the natives. At Little Earth, I think there's 8 different nations at least that are recognized there in that urban housing facility. There's the Somalian community, the Latino community, Hispanic community, Black community, the European American community, all of these different communities. And something that we have seen, in this movement that we've been building here is a solidarity of all of these communities. It's been really uplifting to see like how much community has come to support this indigenous-led movement and resistance. Right after the occupation, we had a press conference, and I'm just going to kind of run through some of these different things we did. We had a press conference where MUD, the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors, wrote a formal letter of support and that's all of the indigenous orgs here in Minneapolis, writing support, for this initiative versus what the city is proposing to do. And then the very next following day, we had a caravan of, over 20 vehicles that went from Little Earth down to City Hall because City Council was having a meeting, and we had a motion move forward through Councilmember Jason Chavez to stop the demolition of the roof depot. We had over 150 people there in City Hall. Like, it was crazy. They couldn't fit all of us in the chambers, and we had the entire hallway filled outside. And the vote did not pass. The vote did not win. We were not provided any public comment, input, or time or space. And a lot of our people were very upset after that vote did not pass. And then immediately following that Friday, we had a court hearing where we had filed a temporary restraining order. We had filed an injunction to temporarily halt the demolition of the depot. And so this was 3 days before, this was on Friday, demolition set for Monday. And the judge granted us that temporary restraining order. We won that court hearing against the city, against their lawyers, to stop the demolition of the roof depot. So from that moment, we knew that we had a chance. And I know, and everybody here knows, and it's the consensus that if we hadn't made the stand that we made, if we had not had the occupation, if we had not had the press conference, if we had not had the solidarity between the different communities here in South Minneapolis, if we had not created this issue that became politicized, then we would have not won that court hearing. We had over 220 people in that court hearing for a temporary restraining order.
Yeah.
So we won the court hearing, which granted us 2 to 3 weeks minimum. That's just to raise the bond, which we've already got the bond raised. That's fine. They asked for $10,000, whatever, that's okay. We paid the bond, and what it's done is it's bought us the opportunity now to pursue this at the state level. So we have 2 bills that we're trying to push through the state legislation here in Minnesota. One of the bills would be to cover the cost of purchasing the property, of purchasing the roof depot site from the city of Minneapolis. And the other bill would be covering the initiative and the plans that I've shared here on the show. So this past week, we actually had our first committee hearing at the House level for it, and it passed that committee, which was a big win. So now on the 13th, it goes to the Senate committee hearing. So we're currently, like you said, using our minds, using our knowledge, using our experience, our training, all of these things to outthink them, out politic the politickers, so to say. And I'm really hopeful and I'm really optimistic that we can continue to keep this pressure going, that we can continue to keep this momentum going. And I truly feel, that there is a spirit to this work, to this movement. You can't plan these kind of things. You can't, what I mean? The way that things have unfolded and the things that have happened and the attention and the momentum that this has gained, you can't plan that. It either happens or it doesn't happen, right? So I'm really optimistic, after these wins, after the court hearing win, and after having our bill move past the House committee, we felt like we could celebrate. And we had a block party actually at Cedar Field right in front of Little Earth. and over 1,000 people came to this block party from all communities here in South Minneapolis, and it was really beautiful and a powerful thing. So, and just yesterday we had a march where we marched across Hiawatha, across the footbridge that goes right next to the depot. And ever since the occupation, there's 24/7 cop presence, Minneapolis Police Department presence over at the Roof Depot site because they're so scared we're going to come back. And they added like razor wire and like all these crazy concrete barriers. I'm like, and so we, went right past them, marched down Cedar. Like 6 or 7 cops showed up because they thought we were coming to take it over again. And then, but we just went right by them and then had like a rally in Cedar Field. So we're definitely keeping the momentum going. We're doing a lot of maneuvering behind the scenes, working with other community leaders, putting pressure on these city council members, and they're definitely feeling the heat. They're all up for re-election, and so all of their opponents that they're going to have to run against are all siding with us and saying that they're running on this like support for us versus this person that doesn't listen to community. So like everybody's feeling the pressure. And something that's been really ugly, honestly, and it's pretty typical, it's expected, it's a tactic that's been used against our people for over 530 years since the beginning of colonization, is to divide and conquer. The city and the mayor are trying to portray us not as Indigenous people, not as land protectors, water protectors, grandmothers, mothers, grandfathers.
Of course.
They're trying to portray us as activists, protesters, anarchists, violent people.
Extremists.
And that we're a danger. And so there's been, some of these city council members have like filed like complaints against some of us. And after the House committee hearing where we won the vote, we were all very happy. Like it went really good. We all gave strong testimonies. Everybody cheered. There were some tears shed, when we won. And, we took pictures with some of the reps that were there that were supportive. And then we all went out to eat together. We took our elders out to eat there at the cafeteria at the Capitol. And then we all went home. And, the next day I get sent this link from the Minnesota State Capitol that they put this release out that one of the Republican reps had filed a report against a protester that he was claiming was with us for like threatening behavior. And I was there the whole time. I never saw anything, not from our people, and not at all. It was the opposite. Like we were very happy that day. We were celebrating. And so they're trying to spin this narrative that we're violent or that we are, coming at them as savages. And weaponizing that against us to try and divide our community. They're going to community leaders, to orgs, to Indigenous organizations that get city or state funding and saying, how can you support these people? We fund you and you're not supporting us. And look at how violent they are. Look at how dangerous they are. And so they're trying to divide our people and our community and our resources, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work because we're too strong, and we know that we're stronger together.
So I got a caller on the phone right now. Her name is Earth Feather Sovereign. She's my companion. And she is my daughter's mother. As I was saying earlier, she wanted to call in. I always advertise my phone number like that so we can bring guests on, but I want to make sure she gets an opportunity. So, and the floor is yours. Hello?
Hi, my name is Earth Feather Sovereign. My mother is Sienna Marcelli. My father's Ernest Clark. I'm a member of the Colville Confederated Tribes and the Nisquela, Okanagan, Southern and Northern bands, as well as the San Juan band. I'm also an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women of Washington. Please forgive me if my reception's a little choppy. I'm on the road right now. But I've been meaning to take a road trip to visit some of our frontliners because it really frustrates me. Talked about conquer and divide. We got all of our people scattered. Everybody's, facing all these pipeline companies in different areas. We have our sisters up north here in Canada, the Emmanuel sisters. We have, the North Dakota Access Pipeline, and we have, the Minnesota pipeline. We have all these different pipelines, and everybody's spread out doing their own work, their own frontline work on their own home territories. But I'm wondering, why aren't we all getting together and going to the source? Why aren't we going to the Canadian sand pipeline source and trying to shut them down at the source? Because most of these pipelines, they're all being funneled from that main area.
Yeah.
That's my frustration, and I would be more than happy to help gather the people up there.
Is that something you see that would happen in the near future? I mean, do you think that there should be a collaboration? Sooner than later would make sense to me. Like, what do you think,
if all
Rachel?
These women are down, contact Winona, contact, the Manuel sisters. I mean, I think something needs to be done soon. And the economy and the way the whole world is looking right now, something needs to be done for our next generations.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to give Rachel a chance to respond to you too as well. I mean, do you see? I mean, like you said, you have other communities reaching out, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. The issue. She's absolutely right. Like the tar sands are the source of all of these pipelines. It's like the beating heart of the black snake, so to say. Like you have all of these veins that are coming off of the heart, but that's where the heart is right there in the tar sands.
Yeah.
My knowledge on it is not super comprehensive, but this is my suggestion, is to first, before forming this coalition, which I think does need to happen, I would recommend looking heavily and meeting with experts on the treaties for that area, because it's my understanding that land falls under treaty, I believe, that was signed by Chief Victor. So look into that, because that's where I believe the solution and the.
Yeah. I mean, and to me, that was the biggest part about it. I mean, that's our Cree territory. That's Fort Chipewyan, just north of there. You know what I'm saying? The 70% of the people get cancer in that area from drinking the water. There was a forest fire that happened about 3 years ago up there, and in the boreal forests of that area, that sand by itself is a non-toxic situation, but once it's excavated and the 100 million gallons of water that they use, a year, like that's insane. I mean, especially to me, when we have other ways and means of and modes of transportation and energy opportunities Like I talk to people all the time, and you're right. And I'm glad that Earth Feather asked that question, because to me, what it suggests is that if we can put a panel together, like you said, Rachel, if we can get experts to come and sit at the table with us and discuss what our next options and opportunities are, I think that's where we can start to see some real drastic changes. Because now it's not an isolated situation in Little Earth projects, or East Phillips, or Puyallup, or Winnemucca Indian Colony, or Lenape Territory, or what was the other one? Line 5, Line 3 situation down there in Texas, Line 1 or 2 or something like that. But all of these are all related, and if we put together a council from all of the tribes, whoever wants to participate, if we put a giant council together, we can make it, because there's the National Congress of American Indian. But to me, I don't really see any really big legislative push. I don't see the tribes coming together and going, collectively, we have $130 billion at our disposal when it comes to gaming revenue in this country, and accessing those funding opportunities to push our message a little bit harder. Not to say that, like I said, it's not just about money, but the idea that our tribes are making that money. And if we're protecting our Native communities, it should start with businesses that we are owners of. You know what I mean? With her situation, missing and murdered Indigenous women is just one heavily disastrous situation for all of our people. And I see all of the compartmentalization with MMIW, for instance. Is that what? It's got to be bad there in Minneapolis. And if there's opportunities, like you said, if there's a community center, a garden growing, especially that is continuous and feeding people and doing all of these things like that, that is such a great idea. Let's come together. You know what I mean? What do you suggest? Do you have any further dialogue that you wanted to share about that? Is there anything that you've seen recently in the community that you haven't been maybe even directly related to that you would like to see more of? Or
it's that it all seems so complex, right? When you look at all these like different facets and all of these different issues and different battles that are going on across Turtle Island, but it's really not that complex. Like when you get to the root of it, all of it is based on a system that was set up to control, oppress, and kill our people and our cultures. And all of these issues, all of the environmental issues, our MMIW, well-briety, the drug and alcohol addictions that are plaguing our people, the mass incarceration of our people. All of these different issues are all linked to the same problem. This country, this colonial country of the United States and Canada, and let's throw in the countries of South America as well. They're all based on the same principle of dividing and conquering, and so really to get to the root of everything, there needs to be solidarity in our people, in our nation. And not just of North America, but of South America too. When this question gets brought up to me, or like when I'm thinking about it, I think about what Tecumseh was trying to do, in the
Bluetooth connected
part of Turtle Island. His whole vision and goal to create a nation, a united nation of the tribes, to be able to stand in solidarity as one. And I'm not supportive of like pan-indigenous kind of things, but I do believe like as Indigenous people of North America and South America, we would be a lot stronger and united when it comes to these issues that all come from one root cause, which is colonization.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, is that what you think, Heather? Is that something that you're seeing as well? I mean, and I mean, I want to hear what your take is on that too. So, are you still there?
Oh yes, I'm still here. Well, yeah, and of course, all of our indigenous people coming together would be a lot stronger. I mean, we've seen a lot of big support and a lot of solidarity when it came to, Standing Rock. But I don't think, it ended there. A lot of us took that fire and we brought it back home, to all the local fights that we have in our area. But, nothing's going to end unless, we go to the source.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about time.
Yeah.
And I believe that when all of our strong sisters come together, and that we will see all the support that there was in Standing Rock and even more.
Absolutely.
I'm a
Welcome
big
over
believer in
Patrick.
And I'm a big believer in grassroots community-led efforts. Like, I believe, like, to fix bigger issues, it has to start at the community level. I mean, even when you talk about Standing Rock, like, that started, grassroots community level, and then it grew into something that was massive and beautiful. And so I think that in order to get to that point where we all are standing together, we need to get our community stronger, and then, I hear people say, like, why isn't more community showing up for events or cultural activities or for ceremony? And it's because our people are literally trying to survive day to day.
Absolutely. I'm so happy.
Trying to survive day to day, like going to an event at night or a protest or a rally or even a ceremony is like a luxury if they have time to do that.
Yeah.
Can I interject? Hey, Rachel, I'm happy to finally be here. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I was late. My daughter was getting an award tonight, and I was at school, as you could tell, fully dressed up. I was at school to be there for my daughter's award. I'm a single parent, so I had to do all the hooping and hollering for her out there. You're absolutely right on this, but I think there's also community also needs to see tribal leadership step up and get their heads out of their asses and start showing up. I mean, a lot of community members from my community and a lot of others, they don't want to do nothing because they don't see leadership stepping up. We have to put these leadership on spot. We should not be stepping ahead of leadership. We should be stepping behind leadership. How can you call yourself a chief, a ward chief, a dignitary of the people if you're not on the battlefield? Our people weren't not like colonialists. Our warriors our leaders led from the front. Our chiefs were in the middle of the battle. They didn't support from the end of the battle. They didn't wait till later. See, I'm one of those people. I believe in calling people out. And tribal leadership is the number one. Tribal leadership is the number one. They get by with a lot. They want, when something good happens and they get money, who's the first one at the table? Tribal leadership, I signed a paper to make sure this happened for my people. But when we have child molestation, when we have women that are getting beaten the hell up and the men are not getting the proper reprimand, getting kicked off the reservation, we have drugs, leadership's nowhere to be found then. You know who has to step up? Our women has to step up again. Because those are the backbone of our community, always have been. But the thing about it is, if our women don't have support from the leadership, no one's going to follow behind. Until our leadership get off their asses, until our community start putting the leadership on blast. And say, guess what? I'm not going to vote your ass in unless I see you do something. I'm not going to re-vote you back in unless I see you do something. We need to start holding this tribal leadership to account for everything they're doing, because they're not doing nothing. They're not doing anything. It's time for our leadership to be up there holding hands with our women, saying, I support what we got going on here. I'm from a matrilineal society. Our women are everything. They make the decisions. They lead our communities. And most Native tribes were matrilineal at one point before we started turning patrilineal. We need to go back to that mindset and be behind our women and stand as a united front and stop worried about tribal. I'm Tuscarora. No, I'm Indian first. My people need to be standing with the Lakota people, with the Dakota people. We should be coming over there and standing next to y'all guys, because if they can do it to one of us, they can do it to one of us. You know damn well they can do it to any of us. That's right. What Standing Rock was all about. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm excited about it.
He was excited.
You're absolutely right. And it also brings to mind like our Indigenous brothers and sisters that hold political positions within government, right?
Yes.
And so, like specifically with this issue here with Roof Depot, and I don't want to throw any shade her way, because she still has full opportunity to meet with us and to be supportive. But our lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota is Peggy Flanagan. And Peggy Flanagan is a Native woman, a sister. And we have tried to reach out to her to meet with her about this issue, asking her to stand with our people. She did tweet about it, saying that the Roof Depot issue is an opportunity to collaborate with community, and that it should be seen that way. And I responded, I was like, we're waiting on you, sister. Like, we need you. It is an opportunity. Come stand with us. Come meet with us. And we still haven't heard from her. And so these individuals that are in these positions of influence, of power in this system, they need to step up. They need to step up, and they need to stand with their people.
Enough of this on typing. And I said, in Native people, it was never about what you said, it was about what you did. And that's something that's been true with Native people from the dawn of time. A chief can call himself a warrior all he wanted to. Until we seen him be a warrior, he'd never be acknowledged as a warrior. So it's time for these people to get out of their asses, and that's exactly what they're doing. They want to play the white man's political game. Oh, I'll give you support from over here, but when I have to be present, when I have to stand tight, I don't want no one to see me. It's deniability is what it is. I want to make sure my job is protected. Adam Beach, I have to give so much credit to Adam Beach. He put his job on the line to stand up north during the AIM movement, when we were shutting down the highway between Canada and America, during the when we had the leader that gave up eating for months at a time. She went on a food fast, then she wouldn't eat anymore. Adam Beach gave up his career, put his career on jeopardy just to show up in person, to show his solidarity. Same thing with Standing Rock. He showed up at Standing Rock. And until these leaders start getting off their asses and showing up in person, they're not leaders, and we need to start putting them on blast. I'm glad you said her name. These names need to be said.
That's right.
Hold on.
So you got some police lights going on there.
You're getting a good gracious.
Are they literally coming up to you right now?
They're here on my. No, they're not coming up to me. There's something else going on. Themes.
I'm about to say you're ending this. You're ending this attracts the cops.
It's amazing because we can't get them to show out for anything. I saw a video on Twitter. The night that our camp was raided by the Minneapolis Police Department, and where the police had the blockade, like keeping community out from coming in. Because it was us women in camp that were in there getting arrested, and community was trying to come in, and the police set up this big blockade right on Cedar. And there was a video I saw where it was all of these Minneapolis Police Department and community saying, what are you doing? They're not doing anything wrong. No drugs, no alcohol. You're arresting our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunties. And the video pans to a light pole where there's a poster of a missing Indigenous woman in the community that Minneapolis Police Department isn't doing anything about. And so like they don't show up. They don't show up for those kind of things. You know, like when our women are being dragged out of encampments, you know, when the Johns are patrolling and picking up women, I can't walk around this neighborhood without a John trying to pick me up. You know, they don't show up for the dealers that are bringing all of these, you know, drugs and poisons to our people. They don't show up for any of those things, but they showed up for that. And I just thought that moment in that video where it showed all these police showing up for peaceful and prayerful people, the entire Minneapolis Police Department militarized against us by the city, and specifically Mayor Fry, and then this poster of one of our women who are missing and them not doing anything about it.
Yeah, and that's the root cause of all of this situation is fear. They fear us because of the power that we possess. Sorry, my picture fell here. Wow, nice. Anyhow, they're afraid of that power, but we are afraid of their continuous disassociation. We're afraid that, like that auntie said when she was speaking about her child and the effects of asthma and the heart conditions and all of the other stuff that is exacerbated with regard to our physiological existence. That's what I'm looking at right now. I mean, what do we do? I mean, if we do form a coalition of people, one that is of professional, merit and says, hey, we've got people coming up. Like you said, Patrick, when you were talking about Adam Beach, I'll put my career on the line. I'll put my life on the line. I don't care. And when I seen you getting arrested like that, not only was I pissed off, I wanted to go up and slap every single one of those police officers just for that. Because how dare you, dog?
Well, it's time to get arrested. And I know people think I'm talking radical, and they're thinking I'm being militant. But when Standing Rock happened, when did the news start broadcasting about Standing Rock? It wasn't when we were being peaceful. It wasn't when anything was happening. It was when we started getting arrested, when the water cannons happened. Unfortunately, some of us have to be martyrs. And it sucks to say that out loud. It really, especially as a military veteran, to know the rights I fought for, to know the rules I fought for, that my own people are not adjusted the same rules that I went to Iraq for, that they don't have. So unfortunately, I think it's time to start getting arrested. I think it's time to cause a little noise. I think it's time for us to get a little louder. I'm not implementing violence, is not what I'm saying, but it's time to stop being quiet. And I said this about our issue within our communities, why we're not talking about the amount of child molestation that goes on, because we've gotten so used to not stirring the pot, to being quiet, to blending in. Damn that anymore. Tired of blending in. My daughter tonight, she dressed in full regalia, eagle feathers and all. And people's like, they asked my daughter why. My daughter says, well, this is who I am. And I want everybody to see me. And that echoes in my head for the things that we're going through. It's time to stop blending in. It's time to stop shutting up. And that's what we've done too long. That's why we have the highest level of spousal abuse on our reserves, highest level of child molestation, highest level of teen suicide. Is because we try to keep it in house. And guess what? Unfortunately, our house is broken. And until we start speaking out about it, and men, and I'm saying this for men need to start speaking about about women abuse. Men need to start speaking about child molestation. Our women have done it long enough without the support of men. And I'm one of those people that, hey, I have no problem opening my mouth and shouting. If I have to get arrested, I'm okay with that. It won't be the first time, won't be the last time. I've been shot five times, blown up twice. I think I can take another bullet if I have to. But it's time to start being a little louder, in my own personal opinion. And I love what you're doing, Rachel. I love that you're broadcasting it. And from this point on, every information you got, any information you got, you make sure you can share it with us. We'll share it on this podcast. We make sure we put it out even further. We are going to be broadcasting on 2 more TV stations in New Mexico soon. We want to share this like cancer. So please send everything you can. We'll make sure we give updates, and we want you on here a lot more.
Okay.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Yeah.
And now my question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just going to speak a little bit on the movement. The American Indian movement was officially founded in 1968 here in Minneapolis. But, to me and to many others, the movement has existed a lot longer than that. To me, the movement is the spirit of resistance of our people against colonization, against these colonial governments. And so, I've thought a lot about the different things that the movement has accomplished in the past, over the past 50 years. We just had the 50th anniversary of Liberation Day at the Wounded Knee occupation there at Pine Ridge, and I would go to that, thankfully. How much was accomplished in these past 50 years. And all of the things that were done and the tactics that were done and the speeches that were gave and the words that were said. And yes, there has been a lot that has been done, but when you go back and you listen to those speeches, when you listen to the words of John Trudell or Russell Means or Clyde Belcourt or Dennis Banks, it's eerie how applicable they still are today.
Right.
And so that tells me how much more work and fight we have left. And so I think, when I look at the movement going forward, from today into future generations, I think of that same spirit, and I think of those same tactics. Like, you're absolutely right. Sometimes we have to get arrested. Sometimes we have to sacrifice ourselves. And, that's what warriors do. When community calls, just like they did here, when the elders, when the women, when the grandmothers, mothers, those matriarchs, when they call and they say, we don't know what else to do, we need help, like, you answer. And so, of course, there's going to be those moments that come, but we also have to use our intelligence and use these educations that we've gotten in the system. Like, we need warriors of all different kinds in today's world, and we have to politically surround them and we have to physically surround them in order to win. We're outnumbered, and so it is going to take all of us and all of these different strategies working together towards one goal. And that's what we're doing here at a smaller level in the city of Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota. And that's how this fight is going to have to change versus how it happened in the past.
Absolutely. You shouldn't be getting busloads of different tribal members. It shouldn't be just you guys. I guess that's what I get upset about. It shouldn't just be you guys. Every tribal nation should be answering the call right now. Every single one of them. We have 500 better recognized tribes. You're telling me 10 members from every tribe couldn't show up? That doesn't make any sense to me. 500 federally recognized tribes and 10 members from each tribe couldn't show up. If you did 10 times 500, look how many that is. That'd be crazy numbers. Mm-hmm. So why isn't 10 members from every tribe showing up? And that's my question for tribal leadership out there. Why are we allowing these few tribes to fight by themselves? Mm-hmm. We keep talking about indigenous sovereignty, but yet we literally put ourselves in our own collective community, our individualistic community, that we don't give support to each other. Mm-hmm. You guys should be bombarded with volunteers. You should be bombarded.
Well, and like that, with that news piece that I read earlier from the gal in Muckleshoot, we want support. We want the help. We want people to show up. I want to check on you real quick. I noticed that it looks like there might be some attention drawn. Everything's okay. You're in a good situation.
I'm okay. I'm just watching.
When law enforcement shows up, you never know. They carry guns. So
no, I think it's actually a medical emergency that's happening.
Oh, okay. Well, good. Mm-hmm. It's not something that's putting you in a threatening situation.
No.
I want to speak real quick about this situation to our menfolk. With my companion, with your companion, with all of us as fathers, men in this community, I think it's extremely crucial, critical, and important that we are the frontline security that we were always designated to be for our matriarchs. This is something like at Standing Rock, like my brother said earlier. He said that was the rebirth of a spiritual calling. But on top of that, there was a request from the elders in that community that asked straight up, do not bring violence here. Please, under any and all pretenses, do not bring violence here. Now, if we have to act in defense of our life, in our solidarity, in our sovereignty, and all of these things, then so be it. But the men, this is the thing that I'm saying to you, one of the things I get so absolutely angry about. I go to powwows. I go to ceremonies. I've been on the front lines. We've had white men that rolled up in a Suburban with guns, pulled it on the only security person that was at our front gate for our Sundance. And we all went up there like, why was he left up here by himself? You know, when I see those kinds of things, it upsets me. But at least our men stood up when it was time for them to do so. To me, that's the statement that I'm making to all the men in the Native community, especially you young men. Our elders talked about this day was going to come. There is a time right now where we're not being recognized. We're not recognized by our elders and our ancestors because our minds are so clouded and everything's distorted. Everything's going on like that. But we, as Native men, we still have an obligation to our women folk. We still have an obligation to protect them. If you know of a sister in your community that goes to work at 5:30 in the morning and she's walking out that front door, and I'm hearing my guest here, and I'm hearing my companion talking about being in fear, worrying about walking down the street like that, that's your obligation, men. To say, all right, got to go and pull security, got to make sure she gets to the bus, or hell, if I can give her a ride to work or whatever it is, stepping up. You know what I mean? And when they're sending text messages, making sure that they're including us in what they're gabbing about too. She's busy right now. So, I mean, I'm going to go back to our caller too. Is there something that you would suggest in that situation that you see might be missing right now that you would think of? Hello? Earth Feather, are you still there?
Hello. Yes, this is Earth Feather again. Well, what really frustrates me as well is when reaching out to these tribal leaders, a lot of people look at leadership as tribal council. They believe that our sovereignty with the tribes fall within the tribal council, but sovereignty actually falls within the people. Tribal council is just there to help serve us, like advocate for us, mainly with the government. That's what I see. You know, these tribal council people are mainly to advocate with the people, with the government. But sovereignty should fall within the people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our people, our elders, our women, who need to stand up.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. You know, like I said earlier, at Little Earth United Tribes here in South Minneapolis, there's over 8 different tribal nations represented there, from the people that live there at Little Earth. And, you know, when there's a direct threat to tribal citizens, nations, tribal councils are legally obligated to step in to fight for their people, and to protect their people. And so that's something that we are working on here, is getting tribal support in this issue, and ultimately for our goals and our plans for the Root Depot site.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm at this point right now, like, I mean, with all of the guests that we've had on our show, even with our 2-week hiatus, handling our personal, private family issues and whatnot, taking care of our families, all of it, sometimes we get distracted with what's going on in our immediate lives. So we can't just dedicate, you know, our energy all to one situation. I listened to a podcast from Steve Harvey, who hosts the Family Feud, right? Is a well-known black comic, one of my favorites, actually, one of the original kings of comedy, right? He says we have 3 8-hour periods in a day, 8 hours of sleep time most of the time if we're lucky. He says 8 hours in our professional time after we wake up in the morning, usually Monday through Friday, depending upon the circumstances. And then we have 8 hours to ourselves. He says, and that's also coupled with 48-hour period of weekend time. So usually 1-2 days of rest between, your job responsibilities and your home and family life. He says, so being curators of that time to be able to focus all of that energy to go, all right, this is this 8-hour period to where I really need to start focusing on my community issues. That's something that we have to start thinking about too, is time management. I mean, we have no time, especially when they call 100 police to a nonviolent direct action. My brother, they work with the Indigenous Peoples Power Project. Matter of fact, Indian Collective has been there at the Minneapolis Indian Women's Center doing a lot of documentation, which is really good. We need to involve those people who spend that 8 hours of professional time in that facet to say, all right, now we've got people here that are actually, going to be here filming this. They're going to be recording every last situation like that. So that way, when it comes down to it, it's the same with the police wearing body cameras. They're documenting nonstop. That camera doesn't blink. So we need to start taking that effort, as far as I can see, and backing you up when you're walking down the street. I'm sorry, but if a John's trying to pick you up, I'm going to walk right up on that dude's car and smash him in his mouth. Like, that's my sister, bro. Like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Now they will say, "Oh, I wasn't doing anything," but no, that's not how our women come up missing and murdered. You know what I'm saying? And if the Minneapolis Police Department aren't responding to these obvious needs for patrols in our neighborhood, what's that say about them? Now it sounds like, with that community action and this collectivization of our peoples out there in Washington, in Minnesota, in North and South Dakota, wherever else in Indian country, we need to start putting some laws into place to protect us. If you guys aren't doing anything, we're going to start fining you, and we can start twisting it. Oh yeah. So anyhow, I can go off on tangents too. I know, Rachel, you said you have a lot to take care of, and I completely understand that. It's been wonderful having you tonight. It's been an hour and 42 minutes of some really awesome discussion and dialogue. I want to say thanks for all of the people that have signed on, have commented. I want to say thanks to Earth Feather Sovereign and Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Washington for joining the conversation tonight. We would love to have you back if that's something that you would like to do in the near future and get some updates.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And absolutely. Updates.
And that woman that was there with you too, that she was talking about her child. She had her voice, man. She made the hair on my own stand up. Let's just put it that way.
I'll definitely come back, and I'll try to get her on as well. And I want to thank you for having us on here. And before we go, I just wanted to say, people are asking a lot of how they can support right now. The biggest ways that you can support is reaching out to your tribal nation and asking them to publicly support us in our initiative here to turn the Roof Depot into this ecological center and community center for our people instead of what the city is planning to do. And if you live in the state of Minnesota, reaching out to these representatives and senators and the governor's office as we try to push these bills through the legislation to be able to purchase the Roof Depot site. And if you live here in the city of Minneapolis, you can reach out to me. Find me on Facebook, Rachel Thunder. I do check my Facebook messages sometimes. So that's the message.
Well, everybody wants to know stuff, so you're pretty popular right now. A lot of natives out there want to get information from you, so I imagine that you're overwhelmed sometimes with so many people, so many questions. So we're honored to have you on the show. You were kind of like a dream guest. I was hoping to get you on, and I told Ron, I was like, I'm going to reach out to her and try to get her on. And then when you responded to me so quickly, I was like giddy. I can't say thank you enough. We also, people we're promoting a company that promotes us, which is Scoden.xyz. We want to give them a big shout out. It's a Native American Facebook. It's like a Facebook, but only for natives. It's called Scoden.xyz. It's us being able to support each other through business, adventures, protests, so on and so forth. Because I'm sharing your information on Scoden as well, because we want to keep them involved. It is run and operated by Native folk, so we want to continue to keep their business going. That we don't have to depend on Facebook no more. We'll have our own stuff we have our own site to go to. Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you all. I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm heartbroken. I wasn't here for the whole conversation. But I'll make sure I'll be here next time. Single dad responsibilities, So
yeah, go and sign up for an account at Scoden.xyz. It's just like it's pronounced in the movies in a good way like that, But it is totally a page. Like my brother wanted to get away from the .com and the .net, the .us and all this other stuff. Scoden is building and it's starting to pick up momentum, and I'm thankful Patrick brought it up. That's a good shout out, Patrick. But again, thank you, Rachel, for joining us tonight. I hope you get in and get some good tea, and you're able to visit with your companion and your family. And like I said, keep us up to date. Make sure you get all your friends and family in Little Earth community there to go and check out Scoden too, because we want you guys to join us. And we're going to keep building this movement together. And again, thanks for Earth Feather Sovereign joining us tonight on the conversation. For the B&B Indigenous Podcast, to all of you beautiful people out there all across Turtle Island, we want to say thank you. Next weekend, next Monday.
Next Monday, baby.
Artist that's coming in. It's going to be an amazing show. You guys are not going to want to miss out, especially all you Comic-Con frenzy people. You know what I'm saying? If you like to dress up in your superhero cape, you like to stand in front of the mirror and pose around like that. That's right. Show off your Indian muscles. This is my Indian muscle right here.
Last thing, thank you so much, as always, from the B&B Indigenous Podcast. Good night. We love you. Peace.
Oi.